And then John, you can take it away.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was. Okay, the time is now 5:37 p.m. and I am calling to order the South End Landmark District Commission March 3rd, 2026 public hearing. Commissioners present are Commissioner Freeman, Commissioner Hunt, Commissioner Sanborn. I can't see everybody on my screen. Let me just see, am I missing anyone else?
Nope.
Okay. Today the commission will be holding a public hearing to review applications. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, extending the suspension of these provisions until June 30th, 2027, we are conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the South End Landmark District Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. This hearing is being recorded. All further conversations between commissioners should be audible to the public in attendance until the hearing has adjourned. Are there any media or elected officials currently present? If so, please raise your hand using the Zoom meeting platform and state your name, title, and affiliation. Sarah, do you see anybody raising their hand before I continue?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, great. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. We will repeat these instructions throughout the hearing. Tonight's agenda consists of design review, administrative review, ratification of the February 3rd, 2025 meeting, 2026 meeting minutes, and staff updates. So we will now go to design review, and we're going to hear 90 Dartmouth Street. The proposed work is to install a gate at the front entrance.
Great. And as part of our new procedural policy for the district, staff will be reading off the staff recommendations that are provided to the commissioners. And staff recommends that this application be approved with the following provisos: that the applicant find the least invasive method of installation and remand to staff for final approval. The standards and criteria states refers to gates as inappropriate for front yards. However, after internal review, staff finds that this particular gate is not located in a front yard and rather is part of a recessed entryway that is atypical to the district because this is a contemporary building built in the 90s to early 2000s. With that being said, staff would be happy to repeat the staff recommendation later on when hearing this application. And to my understanding, Jerry and the Pierro are going to be the presenters. So I'm going to ask to unmute and please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Okay. I'm not sure if everybody can hear me. Thank you for taking the time. Jerry DiPiero, DiPiero Construction. I'm trying to see if I can pull up.
Jerry, for your information, I do have the presentation that was provided, so I'll be sharing my screen.
Good,
and then feel free to just let me know next slide or go back a slide, and I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, property's at 90 Dartmouth Street in Boston. You can move up one, please. Right now, this is an existing photo of the entryway to this unit. They were having problems with people going and sleeping in there and then taking their packages. So they called me and try to come up with some type of a gate that would basically be the same as what the fence is now, with a latch on it. And if you go up a slide, please. I gave some dimensions on the size, and I tried to make the hinges so they wouldn't be seen when the gate was closed. Tried to follow the same design as what the railing is now. I followed that in the gate itself. I did add a little extra on the top, maybe or maybe not. That'll be okay. Next slide, I think it shows the hinges. I'm pretty sure. If you go one more, thank you. I showed a few options. On the top upper left is a hinge on the inside. So when you're on the outside of the building looking in, you would not see that. So I gave three options. The one on the left on the bottom, you would see that. And on the right bottom, you'd also see that one. So the most least intrusive one would be the top left. And I think that's, yeah, I put some bolts in there, the ones that I use. The least noticeable would be the bottom left. Then I would paint them, they'd be black to match the hinge. I did put a detail in there going into the mortar joint. A lot of stuff they started drilling into the brick, but I not sure what the board would say, either brick or into the mortar joint. I think that's all of it. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to go to commissioners for questions first. And then we'll get commissioner comments before we make some kind of a motion. Peter, any questions?
Yes. Is this the main entry to that unit?
Yes, Peter.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's all, John.
Okay. Catherine, any questions?
No questions, just comments. Thank you, John.
Okay. John Freeman, any questions?
Yeah. So Peter implied this was a single unit. This is the entry to one unit,
Yes,
and the gate swings in.
yes.
Okay, cool. That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've got some questions. Can you tell me what the members of the gate will be in terms of their sizing? And I don't really know what the size of the members of the existing fence are that you're trying to match. So maybe you could describe both. I just want to
On the
make sure they'll be
existing-
compatible.
Sorry, John. Yeah, on the detail.
And can you,
round
excuse
part-
me, Jerry, can you go
Sorry.
back a couple of slides to the elevation, Jackie, while we're talking about that?
Okay.
There, that one.
And Jackie, why don't you zoom in on the gate itself if you can do that easily? Maybe even more so.
Yeah, can you
that's
go
the
in?
most
Is it-
it'll let me zoom in. Let me try one more thing.
Excuse me, John,
So,
could we address the larger issue here before getting into specifics of the design? I think there's a larger issue of, is this gate approvable at all? Is a gate approvable?
Well, based on staff comments, and I think I'm going back and forth on this in my head, that this isn't a front garden condition for an original building, where we've always made the case that original buildings with front gardens have never had a gate on the pathway leading to the stoop underneath the stoop. But this is an atypical condition, and it's not a building from the period of significance.
Correct.
It's a new building.
Correct.
So given those exceptions, we might be able to consider an exception here. And I think I would like to recommend that we have that further discussion when we're having comments. But at the moment, I think I'm willing to entertain answers to questions. That's a lot better, Jackie. Thank you for
course.
being able to work your magic. Okay, Jerry.
Okay. If we start with on the existing rail, those circles,
Mhm.
and what I'm looking on my notes, it's about 3/4 to an inch thick width and about 3/4 deep.
Uh-huh.
And what I did is I matched that on the gate.
Okay.
The cap on it is 1.5 inches wide,
Mhm.
almost 1 3/4 inches wide. And I carried that in the size of the tubing. I made the
Okay.
tubing the same width.
Okay. And those are square tubing creating the frame?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
basically the smaller details, I tried to match exactly what was there. I don't have the smaller measurements. I'm gonna say those little ball things there are probably a half inch
Mhm.
in wide and thickness. Like I said, the only thing that I added to it was the top, which I'm not sure if that is
And,
okay.
and what's the material you're proposing?
It's all steel.
It's all steel.
Yes,
And
it is.
what
Yep.
color are you planning to paint it?
I'm gonna match the whole thing in the black,
Okay.
matte black.
Okay.
Yes.
That answers all of my questions. So I think I'm done there, and thank you. And you gave all good answers, Jerry.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Thanks.
So, I think we can go to comments. So, Catherine, since you piped up with the controversial question, how about you further state any concerns you might have or comments you might have?
Sure. Pardon me. Thank you, John. I'm concerned because in the past we have denied gates in situations that were not garden fronting properties. For example, 1750 Washington Street. You know, and there were others also where they just come out directly to the sidewalk, and we denied those.
I can recall examples of people requesting to put gates at the bottom of a front stoop.
Mhm.
And we've denied those. And there are a lot of reasons to deny that. One is it's historically incompatible with, the original the original design intent of a front stoop. They've never had gates at the bottoms of them. It's also just physically unsafe to be maneuvering a gate while you're coming down a set of steps at the bottom of the steps. So we've had a lot of good reasons for denying gates in that condition, as well as gates, entering a pathway next to a garden, between a garden and a stoop. Are there other conditions besides those two that you remember, Catherine? Or are those pretty
Other
much?
conditions or other examples?
Well, there are many examples of both of those conditions that we've heard and denied.
Right.
But is there any other type of condition? But this is an atypical condition. We don't have this condition on other buildings in the South End. A
Right.
recessed entryway with a parallel set of stairs rather than a perpendicular set of stairs. And
Yeah.
it's a new building.
It's a new building. That's why.
Well, newer.
I brought it up.
What
Yeah.
is it? Late 90s, early
90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can't think of any offhand. I just, I don't know, just something about this doesn't seem right.
Well,
Yeah.
I think if we had other applicants view this after the fact, after it was built, and they wanted to put gates on their pathways, we could be struggling with a response to them if we wanted to deny it. But I think we would have to clearly justify an approval here.
Well, thank you,
so-
John. That's exactly my concern is, a property like 1750 coming back and saying, hey, you let them put a gate there. Why can't we have a gate?
Right.
I think it's a big can of worms. I don't know.
It is, and I'd like to kick this back to staff, since staff seem to have had an internal discussion about this and arrived at the conclusion that this is approvable. So, Jackie, can you give us some insight as to some of the, reasons that staff felt this might be approvable?
Absolutely. And it sort of echoes to the discussions that are currently being had. One, that this is a recessed entryway that goes with parallel stairs rather than perpendicular.
Right.
Second would also be the sort of time in which this building was erected,
built.
seeing that that was in the 90s. We're seeing unique circumstances that is, again, atypical to the South End. Just from the top of my head, in the couple of months that I've been here, I've seen certain gates that have been denied without prejudice in order for that, because it's, again, a front-facing set of stairs that is a more historic 19th century entryway that, again, is considered a gate under the standards and criteria, but staff sort of struggled to fit this specific scope of work into the standards and criteria that would specifically outline how we would deem this as something that would be denied or approved. So I think, you know, a lot of it just echoes to the current discussions being had. And like was saying, I think a more pointed understanding that this is very atypical to the South End is the best way to navigate this in the future, and something that staff would be willing to navigate with future applicants if this were to come up and if this were to be approved.
Okay. Catherine, anything further you want to add after hearing staff explain?
No, not really. It may
Okay.
be, it's interesting, you know, in my head, I'm thinking of examples like this, but more in the back bay come to mind.
Mhm. There are examples like that in the back bay of this kind of entranceway. But
Yeah.
original to the period of significance too, because there's an H.H. Richardson building in the back bay that has this kind of recessed entry
Yeah.
with the
Right.
parallel stairs.
It's more of a Romanesque kind of entry.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's,
Mhm.
So I
the
think that
building
entry's
is sort
like
of a
20
mishmash
feet
of,
wide.
And we don't know that the Back Bay Architectural Commission would approve a gate at the bottom of those steps in this fashion. But again, that's a building from the period of significance of the district.
Correct.
Whereas this
yeah.
building
Is
is
not.
a new building, you know, clearly in the style of buildings in the period of significance of this district, but it's not original to the district.
Well, that's just it. They're trying to be, you know,
Mhm.
except they're not really. But
Right.
From a real historical standpoint, the entrance is Romanesque, it's not Victorian.
That's
And there are
true.
other elements that are mishmash in the building.
Mhm.
It looks, you know, how many people are gonna know that? Not many.
yeah,
Um,
picky, John.
Yeah.
You know, it isn't. I mean, I think everything everybody's saying is correct. We are gonna get blowback. We are gonna hear about it. But I also don't think we can deny it.
Mhm.
Well, it's a nice looking gate. I'll give Jerry that, but
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
it
you.
just,
Nice rendering. How'd you do that?
Oh, that took some time. No,
I bet.
I've been going at this for almost, probably 7-8 months.
Are you sure the
then-
gate isn't actually there already?
no, because
I
I
wish it
walked
was.
by.
I wish it
Yeah,
was.
staff checked.
Not
Staff checked
there.
that this was a very impressive rendering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
trying to find the ironwork to match all that was,
Yeah.
that was, and trying to hide the hinges. That was
Yeah.
another thing that I had to work with. Yeah, I had to do a few things to make it where it is.
And
Yeah,
can some masonry repairs be part of this? Or I would.
Yes, if
That
you
might be a
need,
good
I mean, I had said something about the bottom casting there.
Yeah.
So if you want to make that part of it, I could do those repairs and make that look nice.
Excellent.
I don't think we can because it's not on the agenda.
No, it's not. It
Oh,
would
sorry.
have to be, yeah, it would have to be a separate application, which Jerry,
Okay.
if that's
All
something
right,
that you want to
I could put
do,
that in.
we could talk.
We
could-
yeah.
strongly
do that.
recommend it.
I
Right.
could do that. Yeah, I could.
Jerry,
And-
do they want this gate? Because when you go around to the side of the building, there's all those other entries and they have gates there on the other side of the building. Is that kind of driving
This
this?
is specifically was asked of me because they've come out, a couple kids come out and they find people sleeping in that entryway, and then packages get stolen off of there. That's the big one, people sleeping inside that area.
I see.
Mhm.
Well,
To be,
again,
to be
you know,
totally honest with you. That's
okay,
why.
I did ask that question and you answered, although security is something we can't, you know, deal with.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Peter, did you have anything to add comment wise? Because John's spoken up and so has Catherine.
Yes, two comments. I share Catherine's view on this. I can appreciate it's a newer building, but the building was constructed largely in the style of most of the buildings of significance. I do have to disagree with the staff comment insofar as this not being a front yard. Yes, it's an atypical entry, but I think this building has two fronts. one on Columbus and one here on Dartmouth for this particular entryway. So I think this is the front, which is why I asked the question, is this the main entrance to this unit?
Mhm.
So I'm not persuaded that this should be approved. My second comment, though, is should it be, I think there needs to be more done to hide the hinges by finding a hinge that works,
Okay,
that can be put on the inside of the gate and not
Yep.
on the outside of the gate. It's my understanding from the drawing that the hinges will be visible from the outside of the gate. That's it. Thank you.
the one hinge on the top left of that sheet would be on the inside, so it would not be visible. I gave like 3 options. The one on the top left of that sheet would not be visible.
Can you
Go
go
that
to
sheet,
the
please.
sheet?
Yeah.
The hinge one is there.
Right there. The one with the gray, on the top, on my top left. See
Yep.
that hinge would not be, it would be all on the inside, so you wouldn't even see it. On the
But the
outside.
gate will swing out.
No,
Gate would swing in. Yeah, I wouldn't want it swinging out with people walking by. It would swing
Okay.
in. Yes,
Yeah, you can't.
yes.
right.
That's why I gave the 3 options. I wouldn't show it if that was gonna be an issue, so I pointed out 3 different hints. The top left would be non-visible.
Thank you.
But the top left, you'll have to do something to put the bolts into the mortar joints.
Correct. Yes. And I can re-drill the holes into that plate so it matches the mortar joints.
Okay. So, I think we've had the amount of discussion we need to on this. If anybody is comfortable making a motion, I would be willing to entertain a motion at this point.
I move that we deny this application without prejudice.
Okay. We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
You will, okay. Then we can go to public comment, Jackie. So members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, do we have anybody raising their hand, or did you get any written comments from anyone?
I don't see any hands raised, and we did not receive any written public comment.
Okay, well, we'll go to a vote then. Peter,
Aye.
Catherine,
May I preface my vote with a statement?
please.
You know, this is a very difficult one, and Jerry, I respect all the work you've done. It's admirable.
Yeah.
But there is and I looked at the guidelines very carefully before coming to this conclusion.
Yeah,
And considered all the past and possible future applications that we're going to get. It just, as I said, you know, it just opens up a lot of trouble, I think, for the commission in justifying allowing a gate there. So for that reason, I vote yes with the motion.
Okay, John,
Nay. But do you want me to make a statement, or is that okay?
it's up to you. No requirement to make a statement here.
I certainly agree with Catherine and Peter, but I just don't think, I think that because this is not a contributing building and it's less than 50 years old, that we don't have, it doesn't qualify in the same way and isn't controlled by our regulations in the same way.
I completely agree with John, and I sympathize with Peter and Catherine, which puts me in a difficult place. Um, I, um, I'm willing to approve this and fight the fight that we will have to fight when the next applicant comes before us with a gate request for a building in the period of significance that we would likely deny. I think the larger pressure is going to be on staff here. To back up the commission in situations where we will have to deny after having potentially approved a gate here. Now, if I vote yes, we're going to be in a tie situation. I can't remember us ever having a tie on the commission in a vote, so I don't even know how we resolve a tie.
Excuse me, John, if you vote yes, it is a tie. If you vote,
I know that. That's what I'm saying.
sorry.
Before I
if you
vote.
vote yes, it's not a tie. If you vote nay, it is a tie.
Oh, correct. Thank you for correcting me on that. But if I vote no and it's a tie, I don't know how we resolve a tie on the commission.
So what would happen was that the vote would fail. So essentially, the motion that was made by Peter would be nullified, and another motion and vote would have to be made.
But that would
Okay.
presumably be
how-
nullified too, right?
Yeah, I don't know how that solves anything. Maybe
So,
maybe
as a
John Amadeo as chair, his vote weighs more.
Procedurally, we can't. We can't have on a sort of procedural staff suggestion as to what would happen. Again, this has never happened, really. I've asked this before. Essentially, procedurally, a vote and motion can be made to continue until a larger, perhaps, quorum is had for other commissioners to weigh in on. That's again
Okay.
just from the
Mhm.
top of my head, something that could be a solution rather than continuing to have failed motions and votes.
Can you
Yeah,
remind me,
that's-
is the vote to deny without prejudice or deny?
It's to deny without prejudice, is what I wrote down.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I weigh in a minute here? Can I say anything?
Can you vote, Jerry?
No,
Um,
I wish, I wish I could. No, I did
Jerry,
research it.
Jerry, I'm going to ask you to hold your
Oh,
comment.
sure, okay, all right,
Yeah,
all right.
I can do that.
So, I'm going to vote no and see where we go from there. So we're tied.
All right, I will make a motion to continue this.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, I'll second that.
Okay. So we have a new motion to continue this, and we have a second. And do we have to go back to public comment again for this new motion?
I would say to make sure and be extra safe, yes.
Yes. And shall I read the narrative for public comment again?
If you would like, if not, I don't find a need procedurally to need to.
Okay. So, has anybody raised their hand, Sarah, or sent you a written comment since we've discussed?
Oh, I see a hand.
Yep, so I see one hand, Jeffrey. Klug, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. Is it time for a comment?
It
Yes.
is.
I'm curious if the commissioners would have a different opinion of the gate if it was perpendicular to the street instead of parallel.
I think it's hard to answer that question because we don't have that situation before us.
I'm just trying to save some time for the applicant.
Uh-huh.
I
That's
don't
all.
Well-
think that's allowed by code. I think it's a really good question. Because I think it's possible that there would be a very different opinion, but I don't think that's allowed by code. Code is not our purview. But just so you know.
But also, Jeffrey, it would depend on the building. You've heard the discussion. We're talking about buildings within the period of significance of the district, and this building was built in the 1990s, not within the period of significance. So that makes this a unique condition. You know, and also we vote on a case by case basis. So I think any further discussion would have to wait until you submit an application. So otherwise, we're speaking hypothetically for too long while other applicants who have applied and are on the agenda would have to wait. So I hope that satisfies your answer for the moment, your question.
It does, thank you.
It was a good question.
It was a good question. Is there anyone else, Sarah, do you see?
So we did not receive any written public comment, and I don't see any other hands raised.
Yeah. Jerry, I cut you off before we finished our comment and motion. Was there something vital you needed to say?
I just was agreeing, I mean, I did a little bit of digging to just to kind of see if there was any way this could happen before I dug into it months ago. And John had brought up, I remember that building. I mean, I've been around here since the late 70s, 80s. I remember when I think it was getting reworked or done, and I felt that it didn't fall under the same guidelines. That's all I wanted to say. I think, and I'm I just felt that it was something that could be done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, given what I read.
Right.
You know, and I felt very strong enough to spend, God knows how many thousands of dollars to get to where I am. So that's all.
Jerry, the continuation would allow you to gather more information and come back to us at a subsequent meeting. And also would allow the commission to meet with possibly more commissioners, perhaps an odd number of commissioners. And we could, avoid having another tied vote. So did I actually take a vote yet?
No,
I haven't. Okay, so I'm going to take.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, John.
This may be better. I don't know if it should be before or after the vote, but I do remember that there was a commission and I mean a city look into a lot of this as part of the security problems in the South End. And I thought that John and Catherine, you were both on that. Is it worth somehow looking for more information or querying that process, if it was completed or not? I don't remember. You know what I'm talking about?
Kind of, but I don't think they ever called us.
I don't think so. I don't think there was any process that followed discussion about that. But we've talked to applicants about lighting, about cameras, about other things that could discourage the problems they were seeing and improve security. But outside of that, I don't think Catherine and I ever met with the city.
Okay.
I'm thinking of the Rutland Street application that came in. I don't know if we can talk about that as an example, but I'm not sure that was a building that was built in the Victorian age, and we denied a gate.
I don't remember that. Which
front entry or side?
Pardon me?
Front entry or side?
No,
The same
front entry.
situation is. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
just so
Front
staff
entry.
can chime in and remind the rest of the commissioners, this was a proposal to install a gate at a front-facing entryway to a contemporary building. And staff did recognize that, we had that in our memory, but felt that the parallel entryway differed from the perpendicular entryway.
So the point of a continuation is to allow everybody to gather information, the applicant, the staff, and any commissioner who wants to.
That's right.
So, but if you don't mind, I have a.
Well, I was about to take a vote, John, before you piped up. So, if you want to remind commissioners to hold their comments, you are among them.
I know I'm contradicting myself, But I
Okay.
thought that it could be part of the continuation
Yeah.
proviso that we query the city. Go ahead.
Sure. So we'll go for a vote. The motion is for a continuation. It's been seconded. John?
Yes. Yay.
Ca-
Hey,
Catherine?
aye.
Aye.
Peter?
I,
And the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. So there's still a pulse, Jerry, but there's some
Okay.
work to do.
All right. Much
Thank you, Jerry.
appreciated. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks.
You're very
Thank you.
welcome. And
All
very
right.
good
I'll be in touch.
presentation, by the
Yeah,
way.
Nice
yeah,
Thank you.
excellent.
Thanks.
Great
Thank you.
job.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we'll go to the next application now.
Yes, this is 503 Shawmut.
I'm going to read that. 503 SHAWMUT Ave, sorry, I got distracted for a second. The proposed work is to expand dormers at the rear.
Thank you, John. And then to continue on with our procedural policy that is new, staff recommends denial without prejudice. Staff has reason to believe that the center dormer is original to the building, and the proposed design to expand and alter the original roof slope is inappropriate to historic models. And again, the relevant standards and criteria is that original dormers on roof shall be retained and repaired or restored. Expansion of these dormers or adding new dormers may be approved on a case-by-case basis, provided designs are based on historic models. Thank you very much.
Okay, actually, before we continue, can you add to your staff comments by telling us from which public street this rear dormer would be visible?
Absolutely. So this dormer is this is a rear dormer that is not fully visible or not visible at all from the front, but instead, if I am remembering off the top of my head, it is West Springfield Street where we assess the most visibility from. And I am about to confirm that street immediately.
But not Newland
It-
Street?
It's Newland Street. Newland
It
Street.
is, so Newland Street is in fact, yes, it is from Newland Street, but that is actually considered a private way based on these standards and criteria. So like, yes, that is visible from Newland Street, but that side or that street specifically is actually considered a private way. So we did assess that its greatest visibility is going to be from West Springfield Street.
That seems odd.
I thought we'd reviewed things on Newland in the past, but okay.
So
Yeah.
Newland, based again, like staff discussed internally, what we were saying is that certain parts of Newland Street is public, and we have reviewed things on the public part of Newland Street. But in addition, there are certain aspects that are actually private, and we checked the official street book of Boston to make sure that we were doing the right thing. And in
Well,
fact,
thanks for dotting your i's and crossing your t's,
Yeah,
Jackie.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
We didn't know that Newland changes from public to private depending on the block. So that's good to know. We'll have to continue to check with you on that when other Newland Street issues come up. So great. So if the applicant's here, please present your application.
And then Jeffrey, I've made you co-host, so you're able to unmute yourself and share your camera if you'd like, and then you are also able to share your screen to share your presentation, but I also have it as well, so just depends on.
And for the record and for the recording, Jeffrey, just give us your full name before you start.
Excuse me. Jeffery L. Klug. I'm a partner with Butts and Klug Architecture.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna go here and then here. Okay. So we began by taking a look at an old 1890s word map to understand the degree to which the back of the building would be ever seen from a public right of way, or may have been intended to be seen from a public right of way. And our building is, can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
It's right there. And you can see before the Hurley School, there was a block of houses here, and you may have been able to see it obliquely between the Dwight School and these houses here, but it would have been very small and barely visible. We also took a look at the current zoning map, and this whole area where the Hurley School is now is multifamily residential and zoning. And I believe that because it's multifamily residential and zoning, that was the rationale for the commission allowing the significant alteration of the roof of the church, which is becoming condominiums on this corner right here, which is much larger than what we're proposing. So our building is located right here in the middle of this block. There's the Hurley School. The church is somewhere over here on your left. I could call up photographs of that if they become relevant. So, but the owners of this building have, they've been there for 13 years and have been on the South End house tour 4 times, 2 times for their garden and twice for the interior of their house. And their house has been beautifully reserved on the interior. They love their building and have an enormous respect for what the commission does. Our position relative to the dormer in the back was really based on this condition and the decisions that the commission had made relative to the roof line of this church right here. So what we're proposing is from this point on the roof back, and it changes the profile. We're at the most extreme point right here. This is the group of buildings from the Hurley parking lot. You can see that there's nothing. It may be the building at the end, you could say, is intact, but it's obscured by the stairs and decks. These two obviously have been changed a great deal. This one's roof has been eliminated. Our building here has had another dormer added at some period, maybe in the late 1800s or early 1900s. You can tell by the thickness and size of the trim that it's from a different era. So we zoom in, and this is our building here. We took the approach of changing a gambrel roof to mansard roof, which is something that the commission has approved in a number of buildings that are seen from a public right away before. We staggered the dormer windows that we're proposing, so they move in and out. They're all here. The 3 larger dormers are 2/2 double hung windows, taking our cues from the windows below and the geometry of the windows below. This is the existing elevation, and this is the elevation that we're proposing. And that's it.
Okay. So I'm going to go to commissioners for questions. John, do you have any questions?
Yes. Looking at your 2 elevations, just want to confirm the center window is exactly lined up over the window below and is in the same location as the dormer that's current, that is the one in question, the one that's staff has determined to be part of the original building?
So the much like the front of the buildings, frequently the dormers are approximately in alignment with the geometry
that's
below.
fine. Yeah.
So
I don't care about inches.
Yeah.
But it's lining up.
Yes.
And how tall are your windows that you're proposing, and how tall are the existing windows?
So our windows that we're proposing are the same size as the parlor level windows in the building.
Which is how tall?
Probably 6'9".
Okay. And the existing ones are 2/3 of that or something, 4 feet?
Yeah, 5, 6, more or less.
And as part of this construction, to get more headroom up there?
Oh, absolutely.
More light, okay. I think that's my only question at this point.
Okay. Catherine, questions?
Just a quick one. Could we go back to the photograph of the back? As opposed to the drawing? There we go. Oh, there's not one straight on. I guess I went out there and took one straight on. I should be looking at my own photo. What struck
There's a
me,
bit
there we go.
closer.
Yes, yes, yes. There we go. Thanks. Yeah, what struck me was the difference in the design of the two dormers. And as you said, the one on the right here was the original, correct?
Yes. it's
Presumably, yeah.
Yeah, I think I know where John Freeman's going with this question, but that's it. Thank you.
Okay. And Peter, question or questions?
Will the dormer on the right be preserved in any way, or is it going to be, is it going to be completely new construction?
It'll be all new construction. None of the trim is in great shape. There's really from a construction standpoint, it would be frivolous to try to take it apart and put it back together. It would just fall apart.
Okay, my other question is, like, I can't really tell. Are the existing dormers stepped back slightly from the edge of the roof?
No, they're in the same plane as the brick
Okay,
below.
thank you.
If you go to the zoomed in one, Jackie, I think you could see that. Yeah, because the roof projects below those two dormers, but there's also a cornice.
Exactly.
So, and again, if it's not exactly in plane, it's within inches of it, it looks like.
Yeah, from a construction standpoint, it makes sense because they bear on the brick below.
Right. Exactly. So, okay, I've got some questions for you, Jeffrey. Can we go to the elevation existing and proposed? And Jackie, can you toggle between the two?
But I can.
Or are
I
you
have
running
control
it?
of the screen. I'm running it right now.
Oh, okay, yeah. Jeffrey,
Yeah.
could you toggle between the two? Okay, and back again, and then back. Okay, and are you proposing windows between the three proud windows?
Yes.
Okay, and am I imagining it, or did you draw 2/2 windows in there? In between? The recent
they're-
windows?
They're 2/2. Yes.
And are they double hung?
At the moment, they're not. No, the double hung windows are in the three protruding
Okay.
windows, and the others are not.
Okay. And are the proud windows in alignment with the brick wall below, or are they, hovering on the cornice?
They're in alignment with the brick wall below.
Okay, so essentially the same plane as what we believe to be the original dormer.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, those are my questions. That answers my questions. So I think we're ready for comments. Peter, are you ready for comments? If you are, you could have at it.
Can we go back to the either the existing condition drawing or photo? Okay, then we can go back to the rendering of the proposed change.
Is that the one you want?
Well, that looks, maybe it's the angle, it looks somewhat different than the one that showed the full rear elevation of the building. Yep, that one. My comment is that the side casing on these are too thin. It needs to be beefier, and I think that if it is, it will come closer to replicating that original right dormer. And my comment in question is, sorry, did have a additional question. That current right dormer, is that a very low hip roof on that, or is it just a flat shed dormer?
I'm not sure what the question is. Could you ask again?
The roof of the existing dormer on the right, is it a flat shed dormer roof, or is it slightly hipped? A lot of them are slightly hipped.
It is slightly hipped. It's a rubber roof, been replaced. It probably has an elevation of 2 or 3 inches at its peak, and then it's hipped to the edges.
And your proposed new dormer, will that just be flat shed?
It will be
I would
also
suggest
be. It'll be slightly hipped. It'll bring the water to the edges to where the mansard roof is.
okay. My comment is it should try to replicate the construction of the current dormer in terms of the roof line.
And it sounds like that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Okay. So any further comment, Peter? If not, I'll move on.
Nope. Thank you.
Okay. Catherine, any comments?
Yes, and you can all correct me if I'm wrong, but as the building goes up in height, the window openings are to be smaller. So these windows, the glass area is just too large for a dormer area.
Mm-hmm.
That's my comment. I
Yeah.
mean, it would be lovely to integrate those two existing dormers somehow so that they're more consistent in design, but this, I think, is going too far in trying to make, almost a story up there instead of a dormer with the windows.
Right. Actually, this sketch that's on the screen right now, the windows look only slightly taller than the windows on the floor below. But when you go to the elevation, they're significantly taller.
Exactly.
The drawn elevation, they seem to really jump up like that's, they look like they're almost double the height, maybe not quite, but almost. The hand drawn, which I think is a very nice hand drawing, they look almost the same size as the floor below. So anyway, I think your point is well taken, Catherine.
Thanks.
Did you have anything further?
No, just
Oh.
especially when you look at the building next door,
Mm-hmm.
straight on, they're
Right.
much larger
Mm-hmm.
size than that. Okay, thanks.
Sure thing. John, saved you for last.
Yeah, no, you're last.
That's true.
So, but I think probably we're going to be on the same page. So the rear facing, first place I want to say, I actually like your design quite a bit. I think it looks really nice, and I think if realized, it would be great from the interior and interesting from the outside. However, there's a however. The recent history of rear-facing dormers has been one of all sorts of sort of crafted compromise, because there were many dormers that had been demolished, and things like you see to the right, I don't know the date of that, but many like that predated the commission. And one of the things the commission was formed to do was to stop the loss of original material in the South End and other historic districts, obviously. And in this case, we have what staff has determined to be an existing dormer that is part of the original fabric. And there were always on these buildings existing dormers for that upper floor. The commission doesn't want to keep people from using their houses, and so, like the garden level, the roof level, the dormer levels have been. We have tried to find compromises whenever we have applications like this. And it's tricky because the facade itself is not symmetrical. The center window is not centered. There's a slightly larger panel of brick between the from the left, second, and third windows than between the first and second. However, I think there is possibly a compromise if you want to try it, which is in the past what the commission has allowed is the historic dormers to stay proud, and then a simpler version of a panel and roof set back. It won't have quite the quality of design that I see in your proposal, but it will, I think, come closer to meeting the intentions and the policies that have been developed at the commission.
Mhm.
We would want the window sizes to be kept the same. We would, and John can, whatever I missed, John, you can fill in on. We would require the side of the dormer to be, I think it's at least a foot from the party wall. And I think as Peter pointed out, or whoever Peter or Catherine said about the mullion size between the windows, it needs to be large enough to be look like it's wood
Believable.
framed. Sorry, say again?
Believable.
Believable.
Yes.
These days with fine steel, we can build anything, lots of unbelievable things, but yeah, so to be believable. But if
Mhm.
all of that is acceptable to you and your client, I think that we can ask you to come back with a design that's more in that direction that could be approvable.
Right. John, I think those are all really good suggestions. I go back to the fundamental question, can we approve an alteration of any kind here other than the removal of the later dormer that's on the left of the two, since that wasn't original? If this applicant came and asked us to have that removed, we'd probably say, yes, no problem, probably be administrative. But I also want to respond to Jeffrey's initial contention that given the original zoning of the plot on West Springfield Street, that is currently the open yard for the Hurley School, that initially that might have been housing or zoned for housing. And had there been housing there, or were there to be housing there now or in the future, we wouldn't see this roof. That may or may not be true that we wouldn't see it, but currently there's a school there, and currently there's an open yard there that they use for recreation. And I don't see any development replacing that school and its open yard in our lifetimes or subsequent generations to come. Which means that we're always going to have a view of this rear roof. And I just want that to be clear, that we can see this and we have purview over it. And based on staff comment and based on things that John said about protecting original fabric, we could very well deny this or deny it without prejudice. I am, however, I find appealing the proposal that John said, where you actually repair or reconstruct the original dormer in its location, and that be the proudest part of your alteration, and the two windows flanking it would be set farther back. And that the windows be the same size as the original dormer, no larger than the original dormer. And that there be sufficient gaps between the flanking windows and the central window that would be essentially representing the original dormer, and that that there be a sufficient recess between the flanking dormers and the central dormer, as you're already proposing, but assuming that the flanking windows would be set back, so would the recesses between them. be set back to maintain the recess so that the flanking windows always look like individual subservient dormers to the central dormer. So that, I think, you know, we could entertain the approval of. But where do we go, John, from this? Because it sounds like we can't approve this. It's
Right.
we can't approve it in, I suppose we could approve it in high concept, but there would be so much change. You know, I see this coming back essentially.
Yeah, I think so. And I guess I'd ask Jackie, is it a continuation or deny without prejudice so they can come back?
I would say that considers, or that's contingent on the extent of change in which the commission sees and whether or not the current design. So if we continue it, the current design would be used as a means to develop any revisions, or I would say that a denial without prejudice would make the applicant propose a completely new design as a result of this feedback. So
It would be a similar, but it would be new design.
It would
I
be
guess-
different enough, I think, John.
Okay, so a denial without prejudice?
Yeah,
Could I ask a question of the Johns?
yeah, please.
So it's interesting that John Amadeo, you made me realize that in between each of these three openings is glass. Those are
Right.
those are windows. So are
Mhm.
you, in your comments, were you saying that that would be all right, or that that should be roof in between?
Roof, wood, no,
Um,
wall.
Wall,
Sorry,
okay.
you were asking
I
both
actually,
sides.
I personally didn't comment on it. John, I don't know if you did, but I think it would be better if they were solid. So, I find the recesses as double hung 2/2s just doesn't serve the notion of three individual dormers very well.
Well, so when we've done this in the past, we've allowed one proud one and the two set back on the side, but walls with windows in them. And I'm sure we
Oh.
have examples of dormers that have been allowed. Isn't there one on SHAWMUT that you can see from Waltham? I
Are you
know there are
saying where the
others.
recesses between the dormer windows could also be glass? Is that what
No,
you're
no,
saying?
no, no. I'm saying that the only thing that's proud is the original dormer.
That's right.
Yeah, and
And
then the others
I
set
repeated that
back.
in my comment.
Yeah, no, I thought you said it correctly, but
Sorry, guys, I'm still not clear. The space between each dormer should be solid
there's
wood, not
one
Correct.
dormer and then a wall that's set back,
a wall, not a
Yes.
wall with a window in it.
a wall
Correct.
with a window in it. So there'd be
Huh?
3 windows,
Yeah,
one in the center, the original part of the original dormer, and then the walls that were added that are secondary to it. That's why I thought, you know, one picture is worth a
I-
1,000 words. If Jackie can find some examples that have been allowed before.
except John, I'm still confused as to what you're saying. Between the three windows that represent the original dormer and two, you know,
Yeah,
faux flanking dormers, the
wall.
applicant, Jeffrey, is proposing double hung windows recessed between.
No, I don't think we could allow that.
Okay,
All right,
that's
I
what
said I liked it, but
right.
I don't think it meets the policies that have been,
Okay, so that should be solid. And would
Yeah.
that be in the family of mansard, like the mansard is sloping between all three windows? Or would it be a vertical wall?
I think what we've allowed or before is a vertical wall. I'm not sure
Okay.
anybody has proposed sloping between them.
I mean,
But I
if you
think
did,
what
it
we've
would be like
allowed,
having three separate mansards, three
yeah,
separate dormers, sorry.
I think it would get really clunky with all the framing. But
Okay,
but
fine,
what I don't remember anything like that, but what's been allowed has been vertical wall.
between, okay. And it's just that the two flanking
Correct.
windows have to be farther back than the original dormer.
Correct. 6 inches or so is, I think, is what we've said. But the other part is that as they're doing here, it can't come all the way to the party wall. I think we've required a foot. And
Right.
this would be in record somewhere, but plus or minus, inches are not critical.
Right. It looks like what the applicant is proposing is not to go to the party wall. Is that right, Jeffrey?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're offset from the party wall, and it looks like at least a foot,
Yes.
possibly more.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
John A., I have a question. I'd
Yeah.
like to get clarification as to John Freeman's comment. So John, are you also suggesting that the size of the original dormer remain unaltered?
No, I think we can allow an addition to the side of the original dormer, but it has to be set back. I mean, this is a policy that's been written up and that we've been working with for years. I'm not making this up as we go.
Right.
And there are many examples. I can't think of them, but I'm hoping maybe Jackie can come up with them. It's a policy that we compromised because we didn't want to keep people from using their upper floors. Housing is important. Needing to use all space is important. It's like it's equivalent in some ways to the recessed window wells in the front garden that allow people to use their garden level. And John, it's been at least 10 years, maybe more.
Well,
Oh, yeah, I don't argue at all with the policy you described. I believe we've been working with that for a long time.
No, I just wanted clarification as to what his intent was. That's all.
Mhm.
I didn't think that that's what John Amadeo said. I thought John Amadeo said that the size of the original dormer would be preserved.
It
I
would
said the
be in
windows.
the,
I said the window would be the same size window as what is in the current dormer.
and the reason the sides can get a
All of
little
them. In all,
bigger, Catherine.
Well, yes, none of the other two can't be bigger than the original
Right.
dormer either.
but it seems like John Freeman's not saying that.
No, he didn't argue
John
against that.
Amadeo and I are saying the same thing.
It doesn't sound it to me. I was also.
No, it
confused,
doesn't.
Catherine.
All right,
Okay,
well,
can
let's
we,
just get the
can we
policy
settle,
and-
can we settle this once and for all? The middle dormer, the middle window will replicate the size of the original dormer. The two windows on either side of the proposed middle dormer will be further set back from the middle window, so that the middle window represents the original dormer. And the size of the window in all three windows will not be larger than the window in the original dormer.
Thank you. That's perfectly clear now.
That's-
Because it
yeah.
wasn't.
John Freeman, is that what you're saying? Because
Yes,
that's not what I,
That's
that
not
is what
now.
That
I
is what
intended
he
to
said.
say.
So he said yes, Peter. Does that satisfy your question?
yes.
Okay. Let's put that to rest then. The space between the three windows shall not be glass, it shall be a solid wall, and it shall also be recessed back from the two flanking windows. So there will be three planes there. There will be the window representing the original dormer, the two flanking windows that will be set back, and the recesses between all three windows shall be further set back than the two flanking windows. But all of that will be redrawn and brought back by this applicant, assuming this applicant wants to come back. And after this discussion, Jeffrey, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But but we hope you do. We don't want to discourage you. I think we've given a lot of direction, and I think we've described something that can be put into a motion.
So moved.
Jackie, are you okay with that being a motion?
So this is
We're going to deny without prejudice, right, John?
yes.
That was the
Deny
motion.
without prejudice and give direction to the applicant that a dormer that follows the policy we've just described, and I won't try to say it any better than John has just said it,
I got it.
would be allowable.
Okay.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion and it's been seconded. So we can go to public comment then, Jackie. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, do we have anybody wanting to comment, or did you receive any written comment?
I don't see any hands raised, but we did receive a written public comment from Brian Gokey about Newland Street, saying that Newland Street between Worcester and West Springfield is less than half the width of the rest of Newland Street elsewhere. It's always been that way. End of comment.
Okay, good to know.
And that's
Noted. And okay, so great. So we'll go to a vote. John,
Aye.
Catherine,
Aye.
Peter,
aye.
and the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Good luck, and we hope to see you back.
Great, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And we'll go to 63 Appleton Street. The proposed work is to install a new roof deck and bulkhead access hatch at the roof. Okay.
Yep. So staff recommends that this application be remanded to a subcommittee, finding that the new roof deck and railings as proposed would be visible from both Clarendon and Lawrence Street and Clarendon and Appleton Street. Staff did conduct site visit, and we did see that it was visible from the front, a little bit behind the mechanicals, and then the next photo was taken from Clarendon Street as well. And we also recommend that any revised mock-up be made of either wood or caution tape to assist in determining the visibility of the proposed work, because I think the current mock-up was made with rope. So I think moving forward, wood or caution tape would help. And yeah.
So can
I
I
have a
jump in, or John, may I jump in?
Yeah, just 1 second, John. You can go right after me. I have a quick question, Sarah.
Okay.
Where is this photo taken from?
Clarendon Street.
Thank you. John?
So there was a time during the commission when roof decks like this, where it was clear that it needed a subcommittee, and staff determined that all we did was assign the subcommittee in the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we need to go through a whole review here, and can we
Right.
just do that?
Can we do that? Just go right to a subcommittee assignment?
Well, we do have the applicant here that did submit a presentation. I'm not sure if they wanted to walk through it.
Nice try,
and if there are
John.
any
That'd be
questions.
fine. We can do that, but
So David, Kadish, I think you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening, commissioners and members of the board. My name is Dave Kadish. I'm the owner and also an architect. I have prepared a small presentation I'd like to share. There it is there.
I didn't mean to take away from your presentation. What I'm trying to do is make everybody's life a little simpler.
Mhm.
Please go ahead with it.
Yeah, sorry. Admittedly, I'm just a bit frustrated for waiting here for this, but here is the roof deck in question. It is 3 buildings in from Clarendon Street on Appleton. If you hit the next slide, please. The existing condition shows immediately to my east, the exact replica of the roof deck we're trying to propose, and in front of it our roof hatch. Next slide, please. Looking directly across to the north, again, replica roof decks that we are looking to propose. Next slide, please. Looking towards Appleton Street and the addition to the right, which blocks all view. Next slide, please. The diagram we prepared from Appleton Street, as if this was any other row house or brownstone that you would not see. The roof deck from this location. Next slide, please. The mock-up we have prepared showing the extent of the roof deck and the proposed bulkhead. Next slide, please. This image here shows the 3 locations where the photos were taken. So directly across from the unit on Appleton Street, you are not able to see any element of the roof deck or bulkhead. If you do cross the street through the intersection and further down Clarendon from the long view, you do get a very slight view of the railing, less than you see from my neighbor's unit. Going across the street, looking down the alley, in the foreground, you will see a roof deck that is not black on top of my neighbor's unit, and in the background, my neighbor's railing, and in front, you will see the proposed mock-up. Next slide, please. This is the existing roof as it stands now with an existing rooftop unit, HVAC unit, and the existing roof hatch. Next slide, please. The proposed roof deck that is roughly 12 feet by 15 feet with the proposed access bulkhead with access hatch. Next slide, please. Based on Boston zoning code, it is allowed 1 foot above the high point of the roof with the bulkhead allowed 30 inches above that. If you go to the next slide, you will see those dimensions are adhered to. So as of right for building this bulkhead and roof deck for Boston zoning. Next slide, please. A rough diagram of what this would look like with a gray Trex decking and a black railing as required for any potential viewing angles in Boston. Next slide, please. And code conformance diagram, which I know is not really the purview of this board, but I just wanted to show that we are zoning compliant as of right with Boston zoning. Thank you.
Okay. So I think we said we're going to form a subcommittee. So I don't know that we need to get into questions or comments on the presentation, as thorough as it is and clearly diagrammed, and much appreciated, Dave. If somebody thinks that it's important for us to have a discussion or allow for questions, please say so. Otherwise, I'm willing to entertain a motion.
I move that we create a subcommittee to review the application.
Okay. Do we have any volunteers for the subcommittee?
I'll volunteer.
Okay.
I'll volunteer.
Okay. So, Catherine, can you amend your
Yes.
motion to include?
Yes, exactly. Subcommittee to consist of Peter Sanborn and Catherine Hunt.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second it.
I have a second. So I will look for staff comment. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. Do we have any written comment or hands raised, Sarah?
I do not see any hands raised, and we did not receive any written public comment.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So we'll go right to a vote. Peter?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. Thank you very much, Dave. We'll see you in the field. Oh, by the way, I heard staff say that, did you, Sarah, say that the mock-up needs to be made of wood?
Yeah, I mean, I recommended wood or caution tape, any
Yes.
material that would be visible or easily movable for the mock-up, because I think when staff went on site, we did see the ropes, but it was kind of difficult because it was all black.
Right, and
very-
also the rope was sagging.
Exactly, so
Yeah.
yeah,
If
any
I-
sturdy material.
And Dave, have you done a mock-up with us before on any other applications?
No, I have not, and
Okay.
I actually used black for the intent of not being able to see it since that was the zoning requirement. So,
Right,
Well,
Um,
unfortunately, we have to be able to see it.
right. It's a mock-up, and you're not actually building the deck. So we actually recommend yellow caution tape. We prefer that because we can see it, it's more visible. But that means you have to either have sturdy posts that the caution tape is strung between and or to have somebody on the roof with a phone that we can communicate with in the event that we feel that we need to make adjustments in the field. That's the purpose of the subcommittee. So if you can satisfy those requirements, we can have a subcommittee meeting with you.
Sure.
Okay. So, and you can work with staff to set up the date, and staff will work with us. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll go on to the next item on the agenda then, Jackie, which I think is the administrative review, right? So, and Peter, you said you had a comment on something here.
Yeah, it's the next to the last application for 1 Worcester Square.
Mhm.
I reviewed the application and the presentation. There's this is at the top with dormers. The proposal, I believe, if I understand it correctly, is to replace all 1/1 double hung windows with 1/1s.
Mhm.
I think the dormer, the far right dormer, which would be over the entryway 5 stories up, is of sufficient size and it should be 2/2.
Peter, to give you a response, that is exactly what was staff's mindset going into it. And since
Sorry?
then, that was our exact sort of thought when we were first reviewing this application. And we actually worked with the applicant to make sure that that particular window that you're referring to was changed to a 2/2, hence why this was placed on administrative review. We felt that that particular window that you're mentioning, specifically at the dorm of the 5th floor, was important to the character of that area. And so we decided on a 2/2, and that was agreed by both the client and the contractor.
That's good news, but it's not on the application, is it?
Yes, well, it was confirmed through email chain with us. So the applicant actually sent us the updated PDF, but we would be happy to share over that correspondence confirming.
I trust you on it. I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to flag it, that's all. Thanks.
Good catch, Peter.
Yeah.
Good for you. Thank you. And thank you, Jackie, for following that up on your own as well. Great minds think alike. Excellent. Are we ready, though, to make a motion to approve administrative review?
I move to approve administrative review.
Second.
Okay. And I will go right to a vote. Peter?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
And the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. But before we move to the next item, I have a question. It's kind of a moot point now that we voted and approved, but I want to ask about 17 Worcester Square. Replace rotted wrought iron fence with new. Can you tell me why that's on administrative review?
Yeah, so that actually was a in-kind replacement with the rest of the design of the abutting structures. I'm sorry, the abutting fences and that fence. So staff reviewed internally with leadership to dictate whether or not this was to be placed administratively or design. And we confirmed with the applicants that everything will be existing and matching with the rest of the street that is on
Okay,
Western.
great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So we can go to the next item on the agenda then. Ratification of the meeting minutes. And can I just say for the record that the date of the meeting minutes is February 3rd, 2026?
Apologies, I'm still in 2025, I fear.
It's okay,
It's
Jackie.
hard to move into the new year.
Yeah. Well, I move that we accept the meetings if they are revised to reflect the proper date.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded. I'll take a vote. Catherine?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Peter? Peter? Aye?
Aye.
Sounded like an aye.
I think it was.
Okay, and the chair votes aye in favor of the motion. So next item, staff updates. What do you got for us, Jackie?
Yeah, Sarah and I just wanted to say a big thank you to the commissioners who attended the BLC Commissioner Celebration event a couple weeks ago. It was absolutely fantastic seeing everyone there in person. I know that that's hard with the format of our hearings, but it was really nice chatting with everyone and catching up, and it was a really great event. So thank you, everyone. And again, a big thank you to the commissioners and all the work that you put in and the dedication and time specifically for this district, which is quite busy. So thank you on behalf of Sarah and I.
Well, thank you, Jackie
Yeah.
and Sarah, for everything you do. And that was a lovely event. We appreciate it.
It was.
Thank you, Jackie and Sarah, and thank Gabby and all the others who set it up.
And Nick.
I'm going to ask a question. I may get my wrist slapped for asking this question, but can we get an update on the Hotel Alexandra?
Good question.
So we actually don't know much about it right now. So we don't have sufficient information to share with the commissioners regarding any sort of change. We don't have any correspondence with that applicant or any update with the Hotel Alexandra, but once we do have something certain, we will be happy to share with the commissioners that update.
That's
How long
great.
has it been since they've been in here?
It feels like years now.
Yeah.
Do they need to renew their application, or are they still within their approval window of 2 years?
So I know it was approved in 2024.
Yeah, so
As
their
coming up.
expiration date could be coming up, Jackie.
Yes.
The new design was a smaller building.
That's correct.
That was 2024.
Yes.
Wow.
I was
Time
thinking.
flies, John.
Huh?
Time
John,
flies. Yeah.
Time flies.
Time flies. And I will say that off the record, a city person told me yesterday that they talked with a developer who said, we're ready to put a shovel in the ground. And yeah, we'll believe it when we see it. It was,
So, Jackie, I just want to say there is precedent for us to ask developers of important properties whose progress appears to be unknown or lagging to come in and give us an update of where they stand. And this building has had so much scrutiny. There have been so many proposals that have tried and failed. And this was the most recent one and probably the best proposal of any of the proposals we've seen. We would love to see it actually happen, but nothing has happened that we are aware of. So since the approval. So and I also want to say a lot of pressure was put on the commission in the past to approve prior proposals because of the dire state that the existing building was in, that we were given the impression that they were worried it was going to collapse on itself any minute. And it's been years and years since people have said that, and the Hotel Alexandra is still there. But we don't want to push it. Is the roof caving in? Is the building stable at the moment? We don't even know that. Those are questions I think that are important for the applicant, the current developer, to give us I think we are entitled to an update.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're well within our rights to ask for one.
Certainly. And we'll follow up with the rest of the commission staff. Will ask, and any update, and when we receive that update, we will share that to the rest of the commission.
well, can't we just, make it concrete that we ask them to come in to the next hearing, which is April, and give us an update?
Yeah, I think it's actually important to have the applicant come to the commission, Jackie, not just to give you an update.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, some of us have been looking at this thing, since 2007 and way beyond before
Way
that, for the
before
two
that.
Johns. So we've about had it.
Yeah,
Noted.
yeah. So
I'll follow
anyway,
up
I
on
just wanted to bring that up. Didn't want to have us end on a sour note, but it's important that we know what's going on with that. And just so you know, we get asked by people in the community.
All the time. Yeah, yeah.
So,
So.
Yeah.
My notes say that we got an update in March of 25. So that would still be a year and we should still ask for it.
yeah, a year is a long time.
Yeah.
Well, we'll certainly, again, you know, we'll do our staff will work on it, and
Mhm.
I think,
That's
yeah.
great. That's great. So, and that's that. So,
Great.
uh,
And then,
Any
Sarah,
upcoming dinners or?
oh
we
yeah,
would-
we're supposed to have an annual commissioner dinner.
we would,
Yeah, and I don't think Jackie and Sarah know about this.
no, but
um,
I can certainly ask Gabby how it's been organized in the past, and I would be the first to jump on organizing something for everyone, all the commissioners. I think that is a wonderful and great idea. And after,
I
you know,
think
Yeah,
it's
we haven't done it in a while.
technically, we're
We
not
haven't done
supposed
it
to
in a
be a
while.
quorum. So we kind of do it a little below the radar.
Yeah,
Uh,
we shouldn't really be talking about this, but
No, but so, I mean, we
It's
have.
not
in
an
the past, but
application.
It's not.
For goodness
We
sakes.
can't talk about applications and
No,
we've been good
yes.
about that.
Yeah.
all of everyone will be complying with every single policy and law.
Yeah.
can I just jump back to the Alexandra for a second? My
Yeah.
note, John is right. It was March 4th, 2025. And they said that they wanted to start the enabling projects in the fall of 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are, you know, looking at spring 2026. And they said that they now qualify for historic tax credits, economic development, and they're asking for state and federal funding. So if that is the holdup, I don't know, but we, you know, as we said, we should know exactly what's going on.
Yep. Okay.
Just
Great.
wanted to impress you that I have notes.
Woohoo. Very
Um,
good, Catherine.
And then we also have some photos that were taken from the BLC event that Sarah and I will be shortly sharing, that was taken by the city staff and city workers. The PR side of it, that we'd be happy to share a folder if anyone
That's
would
great.
Love
Yeah.
it.
Would love to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks,
And-
Jackie.
I
I'm sure
didn't-
somebody caught me putting something really big piece of food into my mouth.
There was that spinach between our teeth.
That's right.
Yes, Sarah, I didn't find an email, so,
Okay.
and
Yeah, I
I
can
thought I
send-
RSVP'd, but
Yeah, I can send out the folder that had all the photos from the event.
that would be fun. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. So,
It
yeah,
came
Jackie,
from BLC, John.
Oh,
We
I
can
just delete
re-forward it.
those, really? No.
Yeah, it was sent through Eventbrite.
Yeah,
Just
we-
saying thank you for
Yeah,
attending.
Sarah and I can re-forward it with no issue.
that's great.
Um,
Thank you, Jackie and Sarah.
Of course.
So yeah, I would love it, Jackie, if you could spearhead our annual dinner communication. And we'll, you know, we can make some recommendations for restaurants or whatever, but
Sounds great.
it's one of the best things we do.
I can imagine. I'm excited.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's all the staff updates that we have. Unless
Have
I'm
you
forgetting.
talked to Rachel? How's she doing?
She's doing great. Yeah, all is well.
Mm-hmm.
With the
Great.
new one is what I mean. Yeah.
Well, and thank you both for, you know, stepping in and stepping up.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Huge.
So, yeah. All right. Well, until next time. Oh, and Jackie, you got my response too for 35 Bradford to set up
Yes.
our subcommittee, and you've established a date, March 10th, right?
Your
Mhm.
email was sent at 5:32. Now we know why you were a minute late.
Right. So, all right.
Oh,
So-
that was not.
And Peter and I will anticipate the date for the 63 Appleton.
Yep,
Yes.
I'll send it your way.
Oh, thanks,
Great.
Sarah.
Great.
Terrific.
Thanks. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, do
Oh,
we
wait,
have to
stop.
vote to
Motion.
adjourn?
To adjourn.
We have to
Motion to
vote to
adjourn.
adjourn.
I
Do we
move
have
to
a motion?
adjourn.
Move.
Okay. Second?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
And